For nearly half a century, some 50 years, Charles Sparky Schulz has brought us the agony and the ecstasy of the Peanuts gang. It debuted in 1950 in only 7 papers. It now appears in 2,600 newspapers around the world with 300 million readers. The most successful comic strip in history has inspired 4 feature films, a long-running Broadway musical, and some 40 television specials. These days, Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and the rest of the gang can be seen on everything from blimps to coffee mugs, and I am pleased to have Sparky right here with us at this table. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie.
People still call you Sparky?
Well, I hope so. If you hear anybody ever call me Charlie or Charles, then you know that they really don't know me.
Yeah.
No, I was named after Barney Google's horse the day after I was born.
Yeah.
That was the most popular comic strip of its day, and I am told that an uncle whom I didn't meet for 25 years visited my mother and me and looked down and said, by golly, we're going to call him Sparkplug. And I've been called Sparky ever since.
Yeah. Now, your dad was a barber.
My dad was a barber.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you'd get your hair cut, and then if somebody else came in, you'd have to sort of get out of the chair quickly. And
that was always embarrassing because he'd say, you know, this is a good customer come in, and so I'd have to sit on the bench with a half a haircut. And it was so embarrassing to sit there with a half a haircut.
And what influence did your mom have on you?
My mother and I had a wonderful relationship. I remember her saying once, you know, I'm getting so I don't trust anybody anymore. I don't believe anybody. She says, the only person that I believe is Sparky. I believe everything he says. And my dad would say, don't you believe me? And she said, no, I don't even believe you. She was a nice person, but she died, unfortunately, from a terrible, lingering death of cancer at the age of 48, which is much too young.
Oh, boy,
and
sure is.
You know, I grieve over that many, many times.
In fact, you tell an incredibly important story. You were about to go off into the service, and you went back to visit her, and she knew. She knew that would be the last time, and you better say your goodbyes then.
That's right. The night that I had to report back to Fort Snelling in Minnesota, she said, I think we should say goodbye because we will probably never see each other again. And off I went, and next thing I knew, well, she had died. And I don't know how I ever survived those days. It's a long time ago, but those are some things that you just never forget.
There is about you 2 things that I've noticed in knowing a little bit about your life. One, the enormous success you have, but still an element of insecurity or an absence of certainty.
Oh, yes. I just drew a Sunday page before we came in where Charlie Brown is saying, I don't like to be happy. I'm afraid to be happy because
yes.
Lucy, who is in the psychiatric booth, says, well, why should you be afraid to be happy? He says, well, every time you get too happy, then something bad happens. And so she says, well, you're sitting there now. Are you happy? He says, well, yeah, I guess I'm happy. And then he falls off the chair, clunk, you know, which I think proves the point.
You are Charlie Brown.
Probably, or maybe 60%.
60% of Charlie Brown is you.
I think so.
And 40% is your imagination or composites of other people and things.
All of the characters, most of them, are named after friends of mine. And I had a wonderful friend named Charlie Brown. He and I worked at the correspondence school in Minneapolis for many years, as did Frida and Linus and other people like that. Yeah. It's kind of nice to use names of friends of yours.
Yeah. And did they like it?
Oh, yes. Charlie Brown had a wonderful time. He even came to New York here and was on one of those, I think it was Tell the Truth or something, and he fooled everybody.
And I once appeared on Jeopardy as the answer to a Jeopardy question, and nobody got it right, and I thought, well, that's nothing to be proud of. They couldn't get your name.
I was on that one night, and they had a whole list of things, and there's one of them I couldn't answer.
Let me ask the other part of the question, is that you seem to care more. You still love the doing of it. You haven't let go of any of it. There's no corporation making these cartoons.
That's right. I am what my one daughter, Amy, described as she came into my studio one day and asked me something, and she said, Dad, you're obsessed. And to me, if I have to describe it in one word, I would say that is it. But I draw comic strips for the same person or the same reason that some people do watercolors or play the piano or do something like that. It's the one thing that I think I know how to do, and I think I'm proud of being a comic strip artist. I think along with jazz, it's the one pure American art form, although they don't consider us artists, you know. We're downgraded considerably. We're not considered worthy of art galleries and things, but that's all right.
But you feel that you should be? Because it's an American art form, because...
It is kind of insulting when you see a huge white canvas with a black streak going through it. And I remember looking at the Metropolitan once and seeing paintings like that, and I thought, well, maybe what I do isn't so bad after all. But then I went upstairs and I saw the Monets and the Picassos, and I thought, well, maybe what I do isn't so good after all.
That'll do it for you. It's a humbling experience.
Oh, and I read Andrew Wyeth's biography last month, and I thought, I should just quit, because I'll never be Andrew Wyeth. And he is so good, and he gets to do just what he wants to do. So, but I really do.
But you get to do just what you want to do.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, getting up in the morning and creating characters. The other thing that amazes me about what you have done is that you have constantly regenerated. You've created new characters. For a while there, you said they were all male characters, and you created female characters. You know, and you decided that they needed to do new things. There is
That's
a sense.
Just doing a daily gag is no problem. That's kind of mechanical and what you would call professional, but the difficult things are the creation of the broad themes like Snoopy's Pursuit of the Red Baron, Linus's Blanket, the psychiatric booth of Lucy, Charlie Brown's lousy baseball team. Those are the things that are hard to do, and I don't think they can be created cold-bloodedly. I think they have to spontaneously come from something that is created on a Monday and it works, so you try it again on Tuesday, and before you know it, you have something going. If you don't, then you go to something else.
Is that the story of your life, in a sense? You do it on Monday, and then you do it on Tuesday, and before long you have something going, and then you have something else going.
That's
somebody
right.
comes and says, let's do a book. Somebody comes and says, let's do a TV show.
That's
and
right.
it's a 48 share, you know, and then someone says, let's make a movie. And then someone says, let's put it on Broadway, and it runs forever.
And Charlie Rose calls you, and then you think, now I'm really going, but it's true.
This is, you finally hit the big time, Sparky.
Do you know that we have never really pursued any of these things? We went for about 10 years before we did any kind of licensing. The hard part is crawling up and drawing Snoopy on that blimp that's way up in there. On a windy day, that's hard to do.
And also...
You believe me, don't you?
No. I tell you what I do believe.
What?
That they appreciated you at the Louvre.
Oh, that's right, too.
You know, so you've hung in the Louvre, and not many people can say that.
No, not a cartoonist, I know it, yeah.
Who do you admire?
You mean
in cartoonists?
In cartoons? Right now...
Who's in your Hall of Fame?
I think one of the brightest new stars is Patrick McDonald, who does Mutts. He's wonderful. I like Kevin Fagan's Drabble. Of course, I'm a very good friend of Lynn Johnston, who does For Better or For Worse, even though she lives in Canada. But we talk on the phone quite a bit. So those would be a few, I believe. And Pat Brady, who does Rose is Rose, does some of the most marvelous artwork that I think has been seen in comic strips in years.
What do you look for when you look at a cartoonist to see if they measure up for you?
I look for funny drawing. Good cartoon drawing is good design. A lot of people are not aware of that a properly drawn cartoon is one which is appealing to the eye in the same way as the design of the draperies in your home or your carpeting or something. This is what, of course, makes someone like Picasso so wonderful, because of his great sense of design. A poorly designed cartoon is one which just repels the eye. Now, of course, then you have the reverse of somebody like James Thurber, who couldn't draw at all, and yet could draw better than any of us. So how do you explain him?
Now, what do you mean he couldn't draw at all, but could draw better than all of you?
Well, he drew funny. His dogs were funny looking. His people were funny looking. They were drawn terribly, but they were still fun to look at. And I think that's maybe the sentence. Is it fun to look at?
Now, are you a good draftsman? Picasso was a great draftsman.
I'm not a great draftsman. I have a combination of strange abilities. I can draw pretty well, and I can write pretty well, and I can create pretty well, but I could never be an illustrator. It doesn't interest me. And right now, if
that's because the idea doesn't come from you.
No, and I like to do it all myself. But if I tried to draw an adult now, I don't think I could make him over, about 2 feet high. And I just draw the little people all the time.
And what do you think of Disney, Walt Disney?
I wish I had met him. I applied for a job with Walt Disney. When I came out of high school, I was rejected immediately. And my star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame is right next to Walt, that must make him furious now.
Well, do you ever want to look up to Walt and say, see there, I just
Walt,
did
yeah.
Okay? Because some to read about you, those who know you best say, you have never forgotten the story about Walt Disney or any other slight that's come your way.
I never forget a slight. I would have enjoyed working with Walt. I think if they had listened to me and been patient, I could have been good in their story departments and things like that, creating funny things. But Disney characters were never very funny.
Yeah.
It took Mr. Magoo, UPA, and Warner Brothers and those people with cats getting squashed and running into each other. Those are funny things. Walt was never funny that way. Beautifully animated and that sort of thing, but not very funny.
And isn't it good about life? It is that if you had gone to Walt Disney, you would have been just one more person there in his empire.
No, I would have taken over the whole operation.
Of course you would have. So you'd be worth not $2 billion, but $20 billion.
That's right. My friend Bill Melendez, who does all of our animation work for Walt, a long time ago.
Yeah. Back to your biography. So you go off to war.
Right.
Come back after 2 years.
3 years.
3 years. You were lonely.
Oh, yeah. I've been lonely all my life.
Why is that?
I wish I knew.
Everything.
No, I don't have everything.
No, you do.
It took me 50 years to make a hole-in-one.
Well, someone said to me the other day, they said, whatever we thought of them, this was an actor. And he said, acting, my profession is golf. Acting is something I do on the side to make money.
I really don't know. I suppose there's kind of a melancholy feeling or an area in, I think, a lot of cartoonists, because cartooning, like all other humor, comes from bad things happening. People say, well, why don't you have Charlie Brown kick the football? Why don't you do this or do that? And I said, well, that would be wonderful. It's happy, but happiness is not funny. I wish we could all be happy, but it isn't funny.
Is it your experience then that, say, for great comics and for people who can make other people laugh, that humor in fact comes out of sad lives?
Oh, definitely. One of the great scenes of all time is City Lights, where the blind girl recognizes that Charlie Chaplin is the one that paid for her surgery. I don't think there's ever been a more tender scene ever filmed, but it was sad, but funny.
Speaking of all this, there's so much. Donna, who later becomes the Red, what's her name?
Oh, yeah.
You've never forgotten the fact that she chose the other guy.
Well, being rejected like that is rejecting the total you, isn't it? If you lose the golf match, it's because you made a dumb shot. But when you're turned down by somebody, they're turning down the total you.
So they say, I look at you and I find you not right for me.
Yeah, the other guy's better. But she did marry a nice man, so that worked out fine. And I am now married to a wonderful lady.
Yeah,
yes.
who I just met. But the point is, you put Donna in your cartoons.
You know why?
Why?
I was sitting
This is a
home.
woman who rejected you.
Oh, gosh, Donna. She was cute. I was sitting home one night with my kids, and I was listening to some Hank Williams songs. And I was listening to Joni James singing, Today I Met You on the Street, My Heart Fell at Your Feet, And those songs were so depressing. And that was the mindset that got me going on Charlie Brown sitting at the playground eating his lunch, and he looks across the playground and he sees the little red-haired girl, and from that whole series came one thing after another.
After the war, you decide you want to draw, you want to be a cartoonist, yes? Well, how long was it before you got that first contract? Because Little Folks was turned down by lots of people.
The Minneapolis paper turned it down, And then I went over to the St. Paul paper, and they picked it up, but with no contract. They gave me $10 a week, and I just drew a once-a-week series of panels. But I still used to get on the train, go down to Chicago, and spend the night, make the rounds of the syndicates, get back on the train with my rejections, and go home and start all over again. I was never discouraged. I always knew that I was getting closer and closer. I was getting better. And
you were never discouraged. You never said, they're right and I'm wrong. No. They don't believe in me. Maybe they're right.
No, I always knew what I wanted to do, and I did it.
Did you know it was going to be this? Did you have a sense it was going to be this big? I mean,
well,
2,600 papers, 300 million readers, all of that.
No, that was unheard of in those days. I don't know what has happened to the newspaper industry, but I remember hearing that Nancy and Sluggo ran in 400 papers, and I thought that is unheard of, because at that point I was only maybe in 10 or 11. But I just wanted to draw a comic strip that would be regarded as highly as Crazy Cat. Crazy Cat is regarded as probably the greatest strip that ever was drawn, and I just wanted to contribute something that would be that good.
Do you believe it's the greatest strip ever?
No, I think mine.
That's what I thought. Why do you think it is?
A combination of many things, starting with the drawing. Yeah. I think it's well drawn. We were talking about the sense of design. Yeah. It's appealing to look at. The characters are fun to look at, and they're nice people. There's no ugliness in it, and also I think it's highly original. I have put things in the comic strip that no one has ever done before.
Like what?
Schroeder plays actual music. And I copy the notes out of a book that I have. All of my medical jokes are researched from doctor friends of mine, and my attorney jokes are researched that way. I never go too deep, so it's not funny. I think if I have any knack, it's the knack of kind of skimming the surface of information and then making it funny. All of my baseball and sports jokes are funny, you know. I really know the game of golf. I know the game of baseball. I know the game of hockey. I don't do anything unless I feel I really understand it, except women.
So, well, you don't understand women that long at 74. You don't understand women.
No. Is it too late?
No, it's never too late.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I met her too, and so you're doing all right. After you always the idea of Peanuts, the title Peanuts. Not your title.
No.
You never liked it.
No, it's a degrading title. Peanuts is not a very pleasant word in itself, and I think I draw a strip which is reasonably dignified, and I need a dignified name. I was lied to, I think, by the syndicate that said you can't copyright a name like Charlie Brown, but I don't think that's true. So it could have been called Charlie Brown and Friends and Snoopy, but it doesn't mean anything. I think the only comic strip that had a name that meant anything would have been Dennis the Menace. That had a nice ring to it, and it's a name that.
But Charlie Brown would have been good.
I liked, Charlie Brown.
I did too.
Yeah, I'm surprised they even let me, way back at the beginning, use his name fully that way, because editors are rather strange about things like that. Because my friend was always called Charlie Brown. I started doing that back in Minneapolis. Nobody ever called him Charlie once I got calling him Charlie Brown.
So they come up to him and they say, it's Charlie Brown. They wouldn't say it's Charlie.
No, Charlie Brown.
It was always Charlie Brown.
Good old Charlie Brown.
Right. It hit big with the syndicate in what, 1950?
No, that's when we started. We started with the 7 newspapers. We had struggled for quite a while with different things. Nothing was moving along. And all of a sudden, we got the cover of Time magazine. And after that, licensing, Lee Mendelson was able to sell our television shows and the musical You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. Everything started to grow. But like I said before, we didn't push for any of that. These were all people who came to us with ideas. One of the best, of course, was Connie Boucher of Determined Productions. She came to me with the idea. She wanted to do an original book, and she had seen the book that I had, or the strip that had Happiness is a Warm Puppy in it, with Charlie Brown hugging Snoopy. And she said, wouldn't that make a good book? Could you do some more? I said, I don't know, I only thought of one. So she went back home, and within the next hour, I wrote the whole book. and it was the #1 bestseller of 1963.
You wrote it in an hour?
Yeah, I got other things to do, you know.
Well, but didn't you put together the television special in a rather remarkable amount of time, 4 or 5 days or something?
Well, even less than that, just sitting in a living room. I can remember talking with Bill Melendez and Lee Mendelson, and I think the key to it was that we sat there trying to put together this show, and I said, you know, the more we think about it, we cannot do this show without including the famous passage from St. Luke. And that had never been done before either. No one would ever put biblical passages in an animated show. Yeah. And we did it, and of course when Linus walks out onto the stage and says, "Lights, please," and there were shepherds, you know, in the field. That was the highlight of the show.
Yeah, and they did a big, as I said, about a 48 share, which stunned everybody. I mean, it was a great success. They immediately ordered 4 more.
Yeah.
And you knew you had another thing to do.
We did Halloween, and we did Valentine's Day.
Does the money mean a lot to you?
I never think about it. I don't even know how much I get. I never see the
Well, you
checks.
know how much they talk about. I mean, there's, you know,
can't believe that.
$50 million a year
the
and all that
syndicate takes
stuff.
half of it, you know.
Yeah, come on. It doesn't. You don't do all the things you could do. I mean, with the kind of money you make, you could have anything. You could live anywhere. You could do anything. You live in Santa Rosa, California, and you draw every day. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes you happy.
I won't say that I never
Play golf.
did it without knowing that you could make money. Now, let me say that when I was about 16 or 17, I was sitting in my dad's barber chair one day, and I was reading Life magazine that had an article about Frank King, the creator of Gasoline Alley, and it said, Frank King makes $1,000 a week. And I said to my dad, see, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make $1,000 a week. That's the only time, I think, in all my life that money has ever been mentioned. But there's nothing wrong with that.
No. And your golf game, you said it's perfect, but it's not perfect. How well do you play golf?
Well, I used to be pretty good, but...
a scratch golfer?
Almost. I won the Caddy Championship years ago. It's the last thing I ever won. But I've played with some good players. You know, I've played with Johnny Miller and people like that, which is a real treat. Right now I'm up to about a 13, which is kind of disgraceful, but I'm old. Yeah, very old.
Do you worry about mortality?
I worry about everything.
Yeah, I know you do. I'm sorry. You're the one person I know it's true.
I don't see...
And from that worry comes all these characters.
That's right.
Talk about the characters for me, each one of them. Snoopy.
Snoopy, I think a lot of us forget that it's difficult to be a dog. Ever see a man walking down the street and he's got a golden retriever on the leash, and you ever think that that poor golden retriever is saying, what am I doing here? You know, is this going to be my whole life, walking around the street with this guy on a leash? You know, it's a miserable life. So Snoopy has to retreat into these fantasies, I think, to make his life bearable. Although he's got a good master who treats him well. Lucy is the sarcastic part of me. She relieves all of the sarcastic things that I might say. I'm trying to learn not to do that. Schroeder, of course, is restricted to playing the piano. Linus, I think, could carry a comic strip all by himself. He's a good character, very well-rounded.
Have you ever thought about spinning him off?
I think it's a bad idea. I really think that it's more important to have the entire keyboard to play upon so you don't keep striking the same notes all the time. I have a repertory company of probably 15 characters, and if I can't think of anything for Charlie Brown, I can always turn to Peppermint Patty or Marcy or something, and I think this is very important.
I go through life. Everything I see, I think about it as a possible show idea. Every experience, everything I read, I say, that would be great to do a program. That's a fascinating person to interview. Do you look at everything you see and have it sort of come through your mind?
Definitely.
As fodder for what you do creatively?
Definitely, and I have discovered that anything that I do, whether it's playing golf or tennis or hockey or going to a symphony, it must be the activity that gets your brain moving, and I can almost guarantee myself that I will think of something funny while I'm listening to the symphony or playing tennis or hockey or something. It's just the way my mind works.
Funny.
Yeah, I think funny. I don't look funny, so people say, well, where do you get all the ideas? How can anybody who looks as dumb as you do ever think it's something funny? But if you'll pardon the expression, excuse me, I think I'm reasonably witty. I think of funny things all the time. It just comes natural. In fact, all of the things that you see in the strip, if you were to read it every day and study it, you would know me. Those are things that I say all the time. It just comes natural to me.
To read your script, to read your characters is to know you.
That's right. Isn't that depressing? But those are things that I say all the time.
Yeah.
Now, the big problem, of course...
But go ahead.
Yeah, it's like people gathered at a party. Somebody says something and someone else says something that's real funny. I not only can think of that thing, but I have to create the party first and build up the situation so that this person can say something that is funny.
Yeah, so if you hear something funny at a party, it registers with you, you take it home with you, but you got to build up to have that funny line delivered.
Yeah, but it would have to be something that I said. If you said it, I wouldn't use it. If you came to me and said, I've got a great idea for a strip, I'd say, don't tell me because I won't use it.
Because?
Pride.
Pride.
Yeah. Andrew Wyeth thinks of his own ideas, you see. That's just the way I am.
And that's the same reason you do it all yourself,
That's
too.
right. It's
pride.
Pride, yeah.
And when you die, if you ever die, you're not going to, that's the end of it.
My children made that decision, and my wife.
And you confirmed it, though. Or they could have done it for economic reasons. I guess.
Sure. But I don't know what would happen, really. I suppose there's always money to be made on some things, but my children just don't want anyone else to do it. And I've seen too many strips go downhill terribly because the syndicate tried to hang on to them and have other people do them.
Corporate creators.
Yeah. Do you really think somebody else could draw my strip?
No.
Could. I don't think so. No.
I don't think anybody else could have your heart. I think what makes the strip, you think it's funny, I think it's your heart. You know, there's so much love from those. These are not mean characters. They're funny characters, but they're lovable characters.
That's what used to please me about standing in the lobby when You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown would be performed, and I'd see people come out during intermission.
And they wouldn't recognize you?
No, but they'd be smiling and happy, and I think how wonderful it is for a family to go to a show like that where there's not a crude word in it or a raunchy thought or anything. It's just good, decent, funny things, and that makes me probably more happy than anything that we've done.
For a long time after the strip was successful, you weren't famous, right?
About 20 minutes.
No, but people didn't know you.
Oh, no.
They knew the characters.
Yeah.
You know, your kids, for example.
They never knew what I did.
They never knew what you did.
They were surprised when they discovered that some other children...
What did they think?
Well, they were astounded. They didn't know it.
The other kids would say to them, your father's Charles Schulz, or your father created...
Yeah, they didn't know that. And yet, they always collected my drawings, which I think is one of the most flattering things of all, in that they all have my drawings on their walls at home, frame ones that they were proud of, and I would hate it if they were kind of ashamed of what I did and wished that I had been a real artist or something. But that's very...
But you say real artist. And knowing you and knowing the pride that you have, you are a real artist in your eyes.
Think so?
You think so?
No.
You don't?
No.
You don't think cartooning is real art? It's art.
Yes, but not many cartoons live into the next generation.
Yeah, that's true.
And that probably is the best definition of art, isn't it? Does it speak to succeeding generations? Real art, real music, real literature speaks to succeeding generations. And not many comic strips do that. Even some of the ones that we regarded as being really good don't do that. One of the few, I think, is Skippy. They used to be drawn by Percy Crosby. Wonderful things, you know.
Tell me what a day is like for you.
I get to my ice arena about 7:45 in the morning.
Yeah, well, what time do you get up?
Maybe 7:30.
7:30, okay.
Yeah, something like that. I get to the ice arena and I have an English muffin with grape jelly on it, which I can't get in New York. They don't have any grape jelly in New York.
Well, I can get you some. You want some grape jelly? I'll have it for you tomorrow morning at breakfast.
And I read the paper, and I have a lot of friends who come, the early morning skaters, the young children, and they're all wonderful people. And my good friend Richard Dwyer, Mr. Debonair, is there, and we talk about things. And at 8:30, I go over to the studio. And
now, how much do you skate? You skate for...
Oh, not at all.
We
skate on Tuesday nights.
Okay.
We play hockey.
Okay. So you don't skate, you just go for breakfast.
Yeah. And I see what's on on the schedule, like anybody's called or what. The mail comes in about 9:15. I go through the mail. That's one of the wonderful things about cartooning too, is the letters you get from people.
Yeah, are they to you or are they to the characters?
Both. Both. Like if I draw a cartoon where Charlie Brown gets no Valentines, for instance, he'll get 1,000 of them a few weeks later.
So if like
Charlie
on
Brown.
February, the day after Valentine's, if there's a cartoon that appears saying, Charlie says, I'm so sad, nobody loves me. Within 2 weeks, there'll be 1,000 Valentines.
Yeah, 1,000 Valentines. But we answer them all. I may not personally answer all those children's letters, but then I go through all the other mail and see what's going on, and then I finally settle down, and eventually, inevitably, I have to pick up this yellow attorney's pad and start scribbling and trying to think of something. And sometimes you can't think of anything and the whole day is wasted. Other times I make one little drawing and bang, there it is.
Now, when you do that early, do you take off the rest of the day?
Oh, no. I work all day long, up to maybe about 4.
And then,
I'm always trying to double up. I'm always trying to lap myself and get an extra week and then an extra week, you see.
Now, what drives you to keep going at that pace?
It's not that difficult, for one thing.
But it's what you do.
It's what I do.
Yeah,
it's what I know how to do.
It's the same reason all these pro athletes have a hard time letting go, and want to come back. You know, the Sugar Ray Leonards of the world.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Even though they've lost the beat. You haven't lost anything, have you? I mean, do you notice that you lost a step? In terms of the cartoon, is it as sharp as it is?
I think it's sharper than it's ever been. Although I have been criticized. There was a man that wrote a terrible column once saying that I should quit. The strip isn't funny anymore, and that sort of thing. But that's absurd. Al Cap said, 30 years ago that my strip had run the course.
Yeah, well, yeah, we know about Al Cap. When you read that column, did you make you sad? Did it make you angry? Did you fire off a letter? What did you do?
Didn't do anything. I just worked harder.
Put him in the cartoon. You just worked harder.
Yeah. I just made sure that
like the guys who rejected you down in in Chicago.
Yeah.
You get on the train, you go back, and you say, I'm going to work harder.
Yeah, that's right. What else can you do? And I knew that I was not being careless. Also, I have a tremendous fear of being boring. Old people sometimes get boring, and I would hate to start drawing things where I was doing the same things over and over.
And so who checks you?
Me. Yeah, nobody else checks me.
If it wasn't as good, you think you'd know. If it was a little bit boring, you think you'd know.
Well, I have a wonderful editor named Amy Lago.
Right. Amy would let you know?
No, because she loves me. She wouldn't want to hurt me.
Yes.
Who was it that said that? I think it was Sally that said, when nobody loves you, you have to pretend that everybody loves you.
What do you want how would you ascertain your legacy?
I don't know if I'll be regarded as great a creator as Harriman that did Crazy Cat, but I think I have contributed a lot to my profession. I think I have lifted it a little bit. I always used to say that Milt Caniff, who did Steve Canyon, contributed more to the cartooning profession than any other cartoonist, and that's fine. And I would like to have people think that I have elevated the profession to a certain extent.
You're wonderful. I'm pleased. I'm very pleased to have you here.
And my pleasure.
It's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you
very
Charlie.
much.
In the end, after all that he has done, his first love remains the cartoon, the daily cartoon for the newspaper. It has been a pleasure to have him here. We thank you for joining us and sharing in this conversation, and we'll see you tomorrow night.